Hey everybody, Chad here from Take It or Leave It Reviews. It is good to be back talking movies with you fine folks. I'm here to talk about a movie on Shudder called Who Invited Them? This little movie actually premiered on Shudder this past week as part of Shudder's 61 Days to Halloween event, which I'm looking forward to. They're going to have a movie every week, sometimes two, that'll be premiering for the next 4 or 5 weeks, something like that, and I'll be doing a review on each of those. But at any rate, let's get into Who Invited Them. So this movie follows a couple that just moved to the Hollywood Hills. There's kind of tension between the couple, but they throw a housewarming party and kind of a cool couple shows up that no one really recognizes, and after everybody leaves, that couple hangs around and the four of them kind of get into some shenanigans, and it ends up leading to a more shocking, dangerous, and suspenseful evening. So let's get down to brass tacks. Is this a movie that I'd recommend to people? Gun to my head, I'd have to say no. There are some things I liked about this movie, and we'll get into it, but we're going to start with the reasons why I can't recommend this at the end of the day. First off, I thought that this movie's first and second acts were pretty clumsy and sloppy and definitely meandering at times and pretty inconsequential at the end of the day. The movie definitely sells itself as a dark comedy, suspense, thriller kind of movie, but the first 2 acts is all dark comedy. None of the suspense and thrills really kick in until the 3rd act. And we got to get into the writing and the performances for these 2 acts a little bit, because the writing at times, literally the dialogue chosen for the characters is really laughable at times, and the performances frankly are not much better, particularly from the 2 actors who make up the protagonist main couple. Sometimes I think that the writers were trying to use dialogue that made the husband of the main couple, played by Ryan Hansen, trying to make him look like a total just goofball and just a jackass at the end of the day. And at one point they have him address the party and he literally says, "Yo, yo, yo, my peeps, listen up." And who talks that way? In reality, I understand he's a goofball, he's a jackass, he's a jerk and no one really likes him. And, but who says that? That's out of a bad sitcom. It's definitely possible to convey this about this character, but by using a little bit more nuanced language. But this is quickly followed up by someone saying, "Who invited them?" and a pause on that character. And by that point, I was like, oh my God, or just my eyes were rolling to the back of my head. And in the first and second act, we got a lot of expository dialogue and conversations where they were just doing information dumps in these conversations that was clearly directed at us so that we better understand these characters. And I understand that the writers sometimes have to do this, but this was an overused tactic throughout these acts. And speaking of dialogue and conversations, once the party leaves is kind of when the second act, I guess I'd say, begins, because now you're stuck with the main couple and the cool couple that, is more mysterious. And the second act is pretty much just the men and the women separating and just talking with each other, and it's just conversation after conversation after conversation after conversation, and it would be fine if it felt like it paid off, but actually a number of the things that they get into seem inconsequential and don't really seem to add up to much. So much so that it actually feels like a hard reset by the end of the second act, beginning of the third act. And actually, the third act is a positive for me, so I'll get into that shortly. My second pain point with this movie is just that the main couple is utterly unlikable. I wasn't really rooting for them at all during this movie. I didn't like them at the beginning, and I didn't feel too much differently by the end of the film. And I just didn't feel like they had much of an arc, all things considered. And thirdly, and this probably won't come as much of a surprise for this kind of film, but there's a big twist, and for me, I just saw it coming from a mile away. It was very, very predictable. And also, the motivations for a number of these characters, particularly the cool couple, I thought they were suspect at best. I heard what they said. I understand what they're telling me in terms of what they're saying that their motivations are, but I'm kind of just all right. Okay, if you say so. And once again, these motivations were delivered in an expository dialogue information dump that just wasn't very gratifying, wasn't very fulfilling, felt a bit lazy. And lastly, the ending did feel a bit rushed at times. The editing in some of the climactic moments were a bit jarring. It was a bit chaotic. I didn't know where certain characters were in relation to other characters. And there's kind of an epilogue scene, which I appreciate them tossing that in. It's kind of cute. It's kind of world building. But it felt a bit, again, predictable. We've seen it before. That all being said, there are some redeeming qualities to this film for me, in particular, the third act. The third act, at the beginning of it, it felt like there was a tonal shift. It felt like the filmmaker had a lot more control of the film. A lot of the clumsiness and sloppiness was kind of vacuumed out of the film at the start of the third act, and I actually enjoyed the third act a lot. That's where we got a lot of the suspense, a lot of the thrills, some of the payoff, but it just wasn't worth getting through the first and second act to get to the third act, even though I did enjoy that third act a lot. And a lot of the credit for why the third act is so much fun is due to the actors who played the cool couple. In particular, Perry Matfeld. I thought she was hilarious. She could just kill you with a look or one of her dark, twisted comments, and I just thought that she was fantastic, as well as the other actor. He was great too. I can't wait to see what they do in the future. So to sum it all up, guys, I thought that the first two acts of this movie were quite clumsy, sloppy, meandering, and fairly inconsequential to the rest of the film. I thought that our protagonists were pretty unlikable, to say the least, and that they had a weak arc, and I thought that the twist was really foreseeable, very predictable, and that the motivations of the cool couple were suspect at best. And the ending and the epilogue I did feel was a little rushed, and I thought that the editing didn't help. It was a bit chaotic at times. That being said, I did like the third act of this movie when everything kind of finally came together, and this was all led by our two actors playing the cool couple, Timothy Granaderos and Perry Matfeld. I thought they really carried this film, especially toward the end. That all being said, guys, I'm going to give Who Invited Them a 5 out of 10. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Take it or leave it. What do you guys think? Did you like this movie? Do you think I missed something with it? Or do you think I'm on point? Let me know down in the comments section. Let's talk about it. And if you like this review, don't be afraid to hit that like button and subscribe, as I'll be doing more reviews for Shudder 61 Days of Halloween, the next movie being Shalom. And until then, I'm Chad from Take It or Leave It, and I'll check you later.
Check you later. Check you later. Hey, man, get off my case. Oh, man. Chicks don't want to hear that shit.